I send you greetings. Thanks for being here once again. I hope you are well. Za'el of Error here. Today I would like to talk about one of the, according to my own analysis, most common and repetitive problems within the Earth for star seeds, which often leads them to constant frustration and to manifest a constant loop of static reality that never seems to move forward. On a basic psychological level, it is the most normal thing in the world to lose the strength, passion, desire, or determination to move forward when you are predisposed to not succeed in the first place. Or when a person is constantly telling you that they don't believe it's possible, or that you have to keep your feet on the ground. As you may have noticed, this is a continuation of the video entitled, "Does the Impossible Exist?" There is a saying that goes like this: you have to live with your eyes in the sky and your feet on the ground. This saying refers to the fact that the right thing to do is to live dreaming of something better, but without detaching or moving away from the perspective that things are the way they are and you can't change them. Well, I never agreed with that saying. No matter how much you look up at the sky and point in that direction, you can't fly without taking your feet off at some point. It could also refer to the fact that, even if you pursue what you want to achieve, you should never lose your common sense. However, common sense also depends on the point of view, and above all on the level of consciousness of the person, in this case, because it is clear that we must be prudent and careful with our decisions and our actions, and taking into account the rules that apply to the reality that we have contextualized for ourselves, the rules of the game. Even when it comes to breaking those agreements or those chains and trying to change them, you have to do it with the necessary intelligence to protect yourself and not to hurt yourself, of course. But in the case, for example, of an awakened seed telling a matrix person that we are all the creators of reality, and that he can aspire to something better than the life that is making him unhappy, the matrix person will tend to think that the former is being immature, excessively dreamy, unconscious, or even that he is out of his mind, and that sooner or later he will hit a wall that will do him a lot of harm. That wall, according to the matrix person, would be called reality. I clarify that I use the terms awakened seed and matrix person so that you can understand me, but always keep in mind that there is no absolute black and white, and there are many levels, and not only upwards or downwards, but in all directions. There are always many levels, in practically everything you can think of. I would even go so far as to say that it is not something that is limited to Earth. Each density has its own set rules, in theory. And I say in theory, because the truth is that, like the nature of mind itself, everything is changing, evolving. It is never still, and we must be open to new ideas and new perspectives. And just when we think we know how things work, the possible and the impossible, the easy and the difficult, the good and the bad, suddenly one day things become intermingled, blurred, relative, or completely inverted. And for that very reason, you find those kinds of existential debates here too. Because besides, we don't even all live in one density, each of us is a density in itself, connecting or agreeing with each other at certain points. And these agreements can be modified, created or diluted, simply by talking to the other person and discussing the different points of view. Adapting the ones that work for you, respecting the ones that don't, and sharing with each other. Going back to the situation between the awakened seed and the matrix person, in this case for example, each one would be being sensible from their point of view and their level of consciousness or their perception, being that each one lives or experiences such different densities, or with such disparate bases or rules, that reasonableness is relative to each one of them. However, as you will guess, one is able to understand why the other thinks differently, while the other does not, because the former is at a technically higher level of consciousness than the latter. This is something that Marie has also explained recently in her videos to the star seeds. As I was saying a few minutes ago, and despite a higher level of consciousness, it is easy to lose illusion or persistence in something, When someone in our environment is constantly telling us to come down from the clouds. But the psychological implications are not the only ones, or rather they do not end there. Because one of the techniques for engraving anything in our unconscious is based on repetition. And if we put all our strength at a conscious level into manifesting something while our unconscious tells us that we will not achieve it, the result will tend to be a loop of constant disappointment that will end up destroying the patience and the spirit of the one who tries. In the future, I would like to talk more about whether someone can make you compatible with negative events. But for the moment, what I must tell you is, firstly, that you should not be that person yourself. And secondly, that you will have to work on your self-confidence to get to a point where you know, quite clearly, that what another person believes will happen to you is based solely on that person's standards, experience and belief of reality, which need not apply to yours at all. Already, as I say, it is something that can happen right here, to believe, based on experience, that A plus B equals C, and that we become limited ourselves or as a whole. But on Earth, that is extremely exacerbated because of the very strong programming that is applied to them from a very young age. The vast majority of people there tend to adopt a mentality, sooner or later, of resignation. And this is more than natural, not only on a psychological level, since a great deal of social pressure is exerted on them from childhood, which in the end ends up permeating the unconscious, but also because of the immense and doughy soup of frequencies that constantly surround and influence them. Law of dominant frequencies. People are pushed into mediocrity, to simply be a poor sack of bones and flesh that happens to pass through by chance, and must contribute their part to the system for the progress of humanity, or simply live their life, which according to them is only one life, surviving with a job that is available to eat, grow, reproduce, and finally die. In other words, 3D mentality in all its glory. And as if that were not enough, they make it as difficult as possible to escape from such a system or to aspire to something better, so that this mentality is perpetual. That's what most religions are based on as well, being absolutely unthinkable to live up to the mere understanding that their gods attain, for a person with such power or understanding could only be a god. Well, draw your own conclusions. The difficult thing there is to find someone who, despite such difficulty, shows the world that anything is possible, that the world is not just the way it is, and that we can all affect and change it. Of course, my recommendation for this is not to be predisposed to failure, but to be prepared for it. As I said before, changing the rules is the hardest level of the game, especially if it affects more people than just you. Take it slow, study the workings of your reality, take nothing for granted, take nothing for achieved or lost. Just move forward. Keep moving forward, keep trying different paths in your labyrinth. Different maneuvers in your puzzle. Accept the reality you live in today, but don't rule out that it may change at some point. It all depends on you. On your patience, your determination, your perseverance, and the congruence of your temporary conclusions. Because they must always be temporary and congruent. Observe, keep going, and one day you will realize that your ideas have a solid foundation that cannot be overturned by anyone. Work on several levels if you need to, but never give up or become small. You are the source. Of course, you may have made life difficult for yourself. But what do you want to think when you disembody and see yourself on the other side? What a sad and exhausting experience I had. I gave up in the end. Or, on the contrary. At no point did I give up. I did something admirable. I even achieved what no one thought I could do. It's as simple as this. What do you want? Would that make you happy? Is it too hard? Do you really want it with all your heart? Then, go for it. Fear or uncertainty will always be there. Will you let it control your life? Will you risk missing out on something wonderful because of it? Someone who creates a new path that proves that something is possible will always find him or herself alone on a journey in which everyone repeated to them that they would not make it. Za'el of error.